Hey guys, Steve here from Bloom Audio. Today we're going to talk about the all-new SE180 from Astell&Kern. It's the latest DAP in their A Futura series. So we're going to take a look, do a little unboxing, talk about our impressions with different headphones and IEMs and how it compares right now to the rest of the Astell&Kern lineup. So in terms of the hardware, one, it's just another amazing, beautiful device from Astell&Kern. It feels solid, the materials feel great, it looks amazing. It is a little bit on the thick side. You can spell that with a K or with two C's, however you prefer. So when you look at it compared to the SE200, you can see there's that extra space on the top, which is basically, this, and then there's a little bit of extra width there as well. Now, it's still not, in the same league as the Con Alpha in terms of thickness, but it's a pretty big, beefy boy. And so it's, again, that's, I think, largely for this all-in-one DAC amp card. So there's another sort of interesting design choice. You still have good stuff like this nice wheel on the side, but they've changed up their hardware play control buttons. So rather than having 3 buttons on the side and then of course the power button, there's just the power button and a single button that's supposed to handle all the functions. So 1 click is play or pause, 2 clicks is skip forward a track, and 3 clicks is restart the track or go to the previous track. So now too, if you're anything like me, you're thinking about how if I'm halfway through a track and I want to go to the previous track, I gotta be like, which honestly, the feature is really responsive. It works really well. It works better than I anticipated when I read about it. It's not my favorite design choice, but honestly, that's pretty much the only mark against the Astell&Kern, any aspect of the device or its build or anything else. I really like the idea of their all-in-one DAC amp cards, where it's somewhat similar to what Ibasso did, but it has a greater potential because it's not just the amp included in there like it is on Ibasso's DX220, DX300, and their previous flagship units. It's the DAC and the amp, which gives you a greater potential for altering the sound of the device or enhancing the sound quality or any of that. So most of you are probably familiar, at least a little bit familiar with the UI on Astell&Kern devices. It's really heavily focused on the core player that's designed for playing your downloaded music files, not streaming. However, it does have support for whitelisted streaming apps that you install by copying them over onto the device from a computer. You can't download them directly. There's no app store or anything like that. So I think this, in a lot of ways, this works out really well. It gives Astell&Kern more control over the device. It's going to help out with troubleshooting. You know what can be installed and what can't. There's not going to be any malware or anything like that on there. So as they had said in their announcement of the SE180, that there would be some improvements to the UI. So I know a lot of people were hoping, oh, is it going to improve access to streaming apps or anything like that? That's not what was on the table this time. So the big update to the UI is the addition of a control bar that shows up on the bottom of the screen. So the control bar shows a couple things. It'll show the title of the track currently playing. It'll have a home button. And it'll give you the reverse, play, pause, skip controls. So to some degree, it takes away a little bit of the need for the hardware buttons, which are taken off. So that helps. And I think overall, it's a nice improvement. I like having the persistent home button rather than having to hit back a few times, or you could swipe up in most contexts to go home, but the button is a little nicer and more intuitive. Now it doesn't work in streaming apps at this time, so it only works with the core player on the device. And we'll have to see if in a future update it'll also work with streaming apps, which would be a nice feature, but most streaming apps already have their own little control bar that stays with it through the app, so I don't know if that's necessary. But yeah, I think while the update isn't anything earth-shattering, I think it's a nice incremental improvement to the Astell&Kern device. So let's talk about some comparisons with the SE180. So the obvious comparison here is the SE200. So the big draw on the SE200 is that you get two completely discrete DAC amp channels. Two different amps, two different DACs that work together in two separate channels. There's no crossover there. The big draw on the SE180 is, of course, that it has swappable all-in-one DAC amp modules, so you can change that out. So similar, design concepts. They're both in the A and Futura line, so that's probably has something to do with it. Now, just straight out of the box, the DACs in the SE200, I think, outperform the base DAC in the SE180. I think in both cases you get better detail, more resolution. There was a really notable difference in the sort of the definition and the separation with the ESS DAC in the SE200 compared to also an ESS DAC in the SE180. So I think what you're getting out of the box, the SE200 definitely has the edge, but what the SE180 gets, one, it's a lower price out of the box, and two, you get this potential here where these amp cards they're basically pure potential, right? We don't know exactly what Astell&Kern is going to offer in the future. We know we've got the second one coming. This is the SEM1 that comes stock with the unit. We have the SEM2 coming very soon. So there's a lot of potential here as to what can happen in the future and the range of things that they can do with that. Who knows, we might even get like a Con Alpha version that packs a ton of extra power and, adds an extra inch to the top or something like that. So speaking of which, the Con Alpha provides another interesting comparison. I think these two are actually really close in sound, which is interesting because the SE200, one of the DAC configurations is very similar to the Con Alpha. It's a different amp, but the same DAC, but it's tuned very different in the Alpha than it is in the SE200. So while the SE180 is using a different DAC, I find it to be very similar, more similar in the sound presentation and tuning than the ESS and the channel on this and the ESS DAC in the Con Alpha. So in terms of the actual tuning, I do feel a little bit more detail out of the SE180. I think there is a little bit more mid presence as well, like kind of thicker mids, stronger vocals, where the Con Alpha I hear is having a little more power and presence in the sub bass and the lower end than the SE180. But of course, the Con Alpha, the big advantage you're getting is, well, all the power. So I wanted to drop in one more comparison, and that's the SA700. So the SA700 has been out for a little while now. It's not the latest and greatest, but it shares pretty close in price to the SE180. But they just present such a strong contrast in the two devices. So I mean, one, you can look at them and you can see the size, where the SA700 is, I guess the second most pocketable of Astell&Kern's devices, which the most pocketable being the SR25, which is kind of their baseline model. In terms of the tuning and sound, they also couldn't be more different, where the SE180 is very much a neutral, with a little bit of mid-forwardness to it, sort of tuning. The SE180 has this very, smooth, very kind of, addictive. I've heard it described as romantic sort of sound to it. So it's just very interesting how when you look at this lineup, within a few $100s of each other, you say, well, why would we need 4 different DAPs? They're just each bringing something so different to the table, with the Con Alpha bringing the power, the SE200 bringing just the extra level of refinement, the SE180 bringing some of that refinement of the SE200, not quite there, but then also just this potential and the future tunability that's going to come with more all-in-one modules. So the SE180 represents an interesting move forward for Astell&Kern. The core features of the player itself are solid, and the sound with the included SEM1 module is very balanced and retains some musicality in addition to being neutral. But really, what I'm excited about is to see where they go forward with this all-in-one sound module. Do we get more? Maybe we'll get something that sounds a little bit more like the smooth tuning of the SE700. That's a little warmer. Maybe we'll get something that's more like the Con Alpha that adds a really high output amp into it. The possibilities are endless, so I'm just really excited to see where Astell&Kern goes next with this and what kind of options they're going to give us with that. So thanks for watching. You can check out our review of the SE180 along with some other reviews and of course all our products over at bloomaudio.com. And we'll be back soon with more hi-fi personal audio content.